Well, welcome all of you in the standing room section in the back, and also here in the room with us today. My name is Andy Palmer. I'm the interim director of the Kule Folklore Center, and it's my pleasure to do the introductions today. In order to start things off in a good way, I'd also like to provide some acknowledgements that we're standing on lands hunted over by Cree and Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois Cree, Dene, and Métis people, and particularly that we're in the homelands of the Métis nearest to the territory claimed by Papas Deo, or Papas Chase, at the signing of Treaty 6. Our obligations within these lands are solemnized through that treaty, and we acknowledge both the signatories and the non-signatories of that treaty. We're grateful to be able to speak on this land at Beaver Hills House, Amiskwachees, Waskahikan. Now, today, it's my great pleasure to introduce our cool folklore lunch speaker for today, Nataliia Yesypenko. Nataliia holds an MA in Ukrainian Studies from Yesypenko University, where her MA research included fieldwork collecting Ukrainian songs and oral narratives for that university's archives. Her work finished there in 2009 and was integrated with a research fellowship that led to her serving as a curator for the 6 Years Museum in Kyiv for 13 years. There at the 6 Years Museum, she had responsibilities for acquisitions, arrangements, and descriptions of the museum's artifacts, and she contributed to the museum's preparation of permanent and temporary exhibitions. The 6 Years Museum also holds the most extensive and significant collection of Liubov Panchenko's artistic creations, which include lithographs, landscapes, collage, and textiles. Now, Nataliia Yesypenko is both a researcher for us and an archivist assistant for the Bohdan Medvitsky Ukrainian Folklore Archives at the Kule Folklore Center, and she has been our responsible archivist for the collection since her appointment to the position right at the beginning of 2023. In her role here, she describes and arranges artifacts, provides public access and references to the BMUF collections, and she participates for us as our representative at archival societies and conferences. Most recently, she's presented her research and represented the BMUFA at the Dmytro Shotrin International Ukrainian Studies Conference, which was held in October at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. There, she presented a paper unveiling the artistic legacy of Liubov Panchenko, exploring the fabric collages. So today's talk marks the introduction of her work not only to the University of Alberta community here, but also to the general public and to the friends of our societies. We're most delighted today to hear her present Threads of Resilience in the Fabric Collages of Liubov Panchenko. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our dearest Nataliia Yesypenko.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice introduction, and I don't have to add it. So I had it in my text, and now you covered everything. Yeah, thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to apologize if I have some tech issues. I planned everything, and yesterday worked perfectly fine, but as usually happens at the event, we'll see if we have problems. For me, it's both a pleasure and also responsibility to present this brilliant Ukrainian artist. As Andy mentioned, before coming to Canada, I worked during a long time at the 6 Years Museum in Kyiv, and here you can see this beautiful building in modern arts, which was built in 1908, and I had luck to work there. I knew Panchenko's name the same years as I worked at the museum. Because the 60s Museum founder and first director Mykola Plahotniuk and Liubov Panchenko were friends since they were students. He promoted Panchenko's name everywhere, so I had no chance not to know her. Mykola Plahotniuk actually did more than he could to spread knowledge about Panchenko's legacy, but his resources were limited and he couldn't afford large halls and professional designers to set up high-quality exhibit. Panchenko's artworks were usually displayed in small museums, in small rooms, and I still remember that feeling of tightness that didn't allow me to admire her artworks. And finally, in 2023, the 60s Museum, in collaboration with other Ukrainian heritage institutions and museums, organized Panchenko art exhibition in Gulliver Mall in Kyiv. And finally, I could recognize her artworks and truly enjoyed them. The museum staff invited professional designers of this Gulliver Mall to contribute to the exhibition, and they managed to convey the scale, emotion, and movement of Panchenko artworks. This exhibition became possible due to the fact that the museum, the 60s Museum, acquired about 200 artworks in 2021. I was involved in the process of arranging and preserving and digitizing this collection. That's why I give me credit to speak about Liubov Panchenko. In today's presentation, I will talk about her biography, her connection to the 60s movement, and will explain what it is, how it impacted, how her environment impacted her life and artistic activities. And moreover, I will tell and show various genres in which she expressed her creativity, focusing specifically on her fabric collages. Now let me shortly explain what I mean under 60s or шестидесятництво movement in Ukraine. The Ukrainian 60s movement was a significant social, political, and cultural phenomenon. This movement emerged in the early 60s in Ukraine and was characterized by a desire for greater cultural and intellectual freedom. In the 1970s, most active participants that you can see on this picture, were arrested or persecuted in various ways by the Soviet regime. Finally, the 60s played a pivotal role in the fact that Ukraine became independent in 1991. And this image I find really cool because we can see here in the middle Lina Kostenko, a famous Ukrainian poet, with a cigarette in her hand, a man who are just looking at her. Liubov Panchenko was born on February 2, 1938 in Yablunka village, which is now part of Bucha. I'm sure many of you know this small town near Kyiv. Liubov grew up in a family house where 3 generations lived together: grandparents, parents, and children. Her mother made clothing for the whole family, and Liubov gained her skills in sewing and embroidering as she was a child. In the family, she learned numerous folk songs and traditions. Later in the 60s, Panchenko's house became a place where young people from 60s celebrated Christmas and sang carols. Family stories about Liubov Panchenko from her sister and brother include that her talent for painting began to surface at a young age. Unfortunately, parents didn't support her. They considered her passion for drawing as a temporary hobby and didn't buy her pencils and paper. So in 1955, Panchenko enrolled in the School of Arts. In Ukraine, it will be Училище прикладного мистецтва in Kyiv, and started learning embroidery. During her study, Panchenko delved into art history, classical drawing, and honed her skills in various artistic techniques. So, as her friend who studied at the same art school as well stated that at that time it was a really professional education in Kyiv. So Panchenko got a really good knowledge at this school. After graduating from the School of Arts, Panchenko worked as an artist at the fashion house in Kyiv. In Ukrainian, it will be Республіканський будинок моделей, where she created decorative patterns for clothing. The fashion house was famous for its contemporary fashion designs and fashion shows. This house sold its templates and designs to numerous sewing facilities across Ukraine and beyond. It was like a leading institution in this fashion designer field, and securing a position at that institution was not an easy task because it was a competitive position. The fashion house staff often featured their embroidery patterns and clothing drawings in the Soviet Woman Радянська жінка magazine. Panchenko's publications primarily consisted of embroidery patterns for runners, napkins, and clothing. And one on the left side, you can see her name. Like Clarissa explained me, here in Canada, it was not common that the name of the artist is mentioned on the artwork. So in Ukraine, in Soviet Ukraine, it was a regular common thing. While working in the fashion house, at the fashion house, Panchenko was what we would call it today, a self-employed person. She designed, cut, and sewed clothing and garments for people at her home in Bucha. So she created everything: coats, shirts, skirts, and belts, decorative belts. A turning point in Panchenko's life was a visit to the Kyiv Club of Creative Youth called Сучасник Contemporary. Let me explain what it is. Creative youth clubs worked across Ukraine. They were official and were established to develop Ukrainian culture, traditions, and language on the official level. Panchenko met several close friends there with whom she later organized numerous Ukrainian poetry and caroling events. Some of them already mentioned: the Six Years Museum director Mykola Plahotniuk, also a prominent Ukrainian dissident leader Ivan Svitlechny, and Vasil Zdorovilo, who lived close to her house, became friends for the rest of her life. And on the last Panchenko's anniversary, actually Vasil Zdorovilo organized that party. He organized fundraising because Panchenko was not rich, what I like to say. She didn't cook for herself, so he collected everything, clothes, even we bought fridge for her. So he was truly her best friend. A part of the club Suchasnik, contemporary in Kyiv, was a folk choir Zhaivoronok, Lark. Since the choir financial resources, as they were students, were limited and they couldn't afford concert costumes, Panchenko helped them. She created and sought costumes for the entire choir. And on this slide, you can see the choir in the costumes on the stage. And on the top is a really funny banner. Communism, Весна людства is a spring for the humans. Additionally, she contributed her artistic skills to create posters in the choir performances. In 1968, Panchenko realized the necessity of university degree. So she was graduated from School of Arts, and in the late 60s she decided that she wants to gain a higher education. She applied to the Lviv printing house named after Ivan Fedorev that just opened a department in Kyiv, so she didn't have to leave and move to Lviv. She stayed in Kyiv, and she was enrolled in the graphics department. During her time as a student, she delved into the world of linocut and created illustrations for Ukrainian folk songs and poems. And on the next slide, you can see illustration to the Ukrainian writer Mikhailo Kotsubensky novel, The Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. Actually, it was her diploma work, and she created a collection of illustrations to this work. Liubov Panchenko's legacy encompasses various genres and topics, and it is full of folk elements. Many of her artworks feature embroidered shirts, runners, ribbons, wrists, and dishes. For example, like this. It was natural for her to interact with folk elements since she raised in this environment. But Panchenko featured also a dance, and it was also like a folk element in her creativity. In this slide and on the poster on the left, you can see a young woman in a moment of a fast dance. Actually, I found these two posters when I went through the poster collection in the Bogdan Medvitsky Ukrainian Folklore archives in February this year because of preparation to Shevchenko exhibit, so it was accidentally. The story about these posters goes back to the 70s, when Panchenko took part in a poster competition for the Verovka choir performance. Based on the testimony she left in the interview with her friend Natalka Poklad, 4 Panchenko's posters were accepted and issued in the run of 10,000 copies, and 2 of them you can see here. The competition was organized by the Union of Soviet Artists, and Panchenko submitted her works bypassing the union. That was rather an exception than a rule at that time. Let me clarify the role of and influence of Union of Soviet Artists in Ukraine. It was actually found when Panchenko was born in 1938, and this institution became a dominant institution that controlled artists and their activities. So it was created for control. Members of the union had the privilege, when you were the member of the union, had the privilege of renting art workshops, getting apartments, participating in exhibitions, receiving high-paying orders, and opportunity to buy a car. People in Soviet regime couldn't buy a vehicle even if they had enough money. They had to have permission. Such a monopoly operated until the end of the 80s. Panchenko was not a member of this union of artists and accordingly had a low chance to win, but she did. The poster, so this poster consists of two her pictures. The left one is Vehor, Relthwind, I can pronounce it, and the right one is Dam licha za kablukam. It's idiom that means to dance with passion. The left one is 1972 and the right is 1969, and the posters were issued in 1978. So she combined her two paintings, and she flipped the image of the woman and changed colors a little bit. Panchenko, and the second poster is more general and collective image of the woman from all her paintings. So she's really typical for Panchenko's artworks. You can find such a woman everywhere. For example, in Kule I demonstrated, in Vehor even. Panchenko also demonstrated her talent and flexibility as she continuously switched between techniques ranging from flat decorative painting. This is the decorative painting Svitemi, My World, to intricate pencil drawings, from black and white, here a little bit horror here, to multicolor paintings with completely another topic. From embroidery to entire clothing creating. Panchenko achieved such a high level of art skills with a dedicated work and patience. Her self-education involved visits to museums, fieldworks, travels through Ukraine, collecting folklore and original embroideries. Panchenko's passion for drawing and endless effort resulted in a range of numerous themes in her artistic legacy. It includes graphic illustrations for Lesia Ukrainka's Forest Song Mavka, collages for Taras Shevchenko's poem Topola and Maria, lino cuts for Ukrainian songs, as well as landscapes of Kyiv and its surroundings, Carpathians and Georgia. Maybe a little bit dark here. Yeah, but it is dark. It's a really dark painting. Panchenko's life took a darker turn in 1972 when a wave of severe repression swept across Ukraine. Over 150 people across Ukraine were arrested on one day on January 12, including Panchenko close friends I've already mentioned. First of them was Ivan Svitlechny, who was the leader of dissident movement. He was sentenced to 12-year imprisonment, while Mykola Plahotniuk spent 9 years in the mental health clinic, diagnosed with national schizophrenia. So when you speak Ukrainian, when you sing Ukrainian songs, and try to promote it, you are an enemy in Soviet Union. You were an enemy. Mental health treatment in facilities now known, mental treatment in facilities now known in Ukraine as mental prisons became a powerful tool of intimidation during the 70s and 80s. Even mentally healthy people were subjected to surveillance and powerful psychotropical drugs with severe side effects. Patient records were often incomplete and leaving much to imagination about the torment. Mykola Plahotniuk really discussed, who spent 9 years in such institution, who was a doctor, really discussed this period in his life with me when he worked together. So she avoided this topic regularly, and only once he mentioned that he was not ready to return to that place again, even based on his deep convince and so on. So he wasn't ready. Panchenko herself became a patient of mental hospitals from the 70s and onwards, spending several months per year in these institutions. In 1997, Panchenko shared her experiences in an interview with the same friend, Natalka Poklad. According to this interview, Panchenko managed to establish a good connection with 2 doctors and a few nurses who helped her during this challenging period of time. The nurses pointed out the most dangerous drugs, allowing Panchenko to avoid them. Moreover, the doctors occasionally permitted her to return home during their shifts, explaining that of a positive impact of her emotional well-being. Exactly at that time, on the verge of her mental collapse, Panchenko came up with the idea to create collages. First in her imagination, and then brought to life during her short stays at home. These collages came in small and big sizes. Small ones Panchenko gave as a gift to doctors and nurses who helped her, and big ones she left for herself. And till the 2021, she kept all of them at her house, and she said that these collages were her children. Vasyl Perevalsky, a Ukrainian visual artist, painter, and Panchenko's friend, asserted that she created over 40 collages in total. Most of them she created between 1973 and 1975, and a few in 1978. Almost half, about 24, possesses the Sixth Museum in Kyiv. The rest are in private collections, as Panchenko refused to sell her collages. She just presented them to friends as a gift. She came to create collages already with specific experience in various fields of creative activity. Let me explain. Her seamstress experience gave her the skill of accurately cutting intricate clothing details. When she created posters, she gained the ability to create an integrity image that could only be perceived from the distance. The fashion house and sewing work at home gave her fabric pieces, actually the material for their creation. Actually, it is difficult to restore the process of creating collages, as Panchenko didn't leave any evidence of this. Her friends stated that she worked fast and accurate, And keeping this in mind, I can safely assume that she did not use templates for her collages and just cut them out immediately and put on the base to be glued later. Because she really had limited time when she was at home. Panchenko's technique was to attach collage pieces together, edge to edge, and do not overlap them. So here you can see how she did it. Actually, she preferred to make ovals and to avoid edges. So she also deliberately chose the fabric and worked mostly with textiles of solid color and texture. She aimed to create a technically flat image with some 3D shape effect. Panchenko's collages convey different emotions from playful and funny to protest. She skillfully switched between these endpoints, and an example of this duality can be seen in the collages Topola, after Taras Shevchenko's poem, and Unexpected Meeting. I think the second one doesn't need to be explained, but the first one, the poem Topola, Poplar, after Taras Shevchenko, tells the sad story of a young woman who lost her beloved in the war. She couldn't survive the grief and became a poplar. So this is the short story. Finally, we came to collages, and I will emphasize two of them with protest expression. In 1973, Panchenko created several collages infused with a clear protest motive. It was her reaction to the arrests of her friends in 1972. Panchenko created Вогнище Inquisitii, Inquisition Fire, collage, also known as Heretic. The male figure depicted in the collage is likely inspired by Ivan Svitlechny, who was one of the leaders of dissident movement. Svitlechny, as I already mentioned, spent 12 years in prison for anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. He was released in 1989 and passed away shortly after Ukraine became independent. The collage name Inquisition Fire appeals to an obvious connection with the medieval Inquisition and the innocent people who were accused. The collage Inquisition Fire draws the eye with its burning red color and conveys the fire, actually the feeling of fire. And we can see the man figure pretty clear, but on the next slide you can see it more better. The figure, the man is clenching the right fist. I don't know if you can see it in the right corner, indicating tension and readiness for battle. We can see the same. We can see the man's face, chest, and right hand, while the lower part of his body is already in fire. But the impression of his confidence standing on both legs remains. The man has already has a slightly oversized fist. We can often find hands raising upwards, fists, and oversized hands in paintings from 60s and 70s. They have multiple meanings, and one of them is readiness for resilience. The next slide shows Alla Horska's famous Ukrainian paint, Linokat, Hnivny Taras, Angry Taras, and then we reach Shevchenko. This is Taras Shevchenko, Ukrainian poet. In this artwork, Taras Shevchenko is actually a skeleton that is rising from his grave with clenched fists. By the way, Shevchenko died in 1961, so more than 100 years ago at that time. Another painting by Alla Horska, Portrait of Ivan Svitlechny, has a similar to Inquisition fire red background, oversized hands, but was created a decade earlier. Panchenko created her version of resistance and Svitlechny as a symbol of the dissident movement. This Inquisition fire collage is still in the Sixtures Museum permanent exhibit part, but in the small corridor. So today I would place this collage on a separate wall, big wall, with a special light that the frame really burns in visitors' eyes. I assume you mentioned this difference between this dark entire image and how light it is when you go closer. Another collage that continues this theme is a protest collage Dume Moyi Dume, and the last one I will show today, or Portrait of Taras Shevchenko. Dume Moyi Dume was created in 1973 in honor of the 106th anniversary of Shevchenko's birth. He was born in 1814. Taras Shevchenko held a significant place for that generation for 6 years and served as a symbol of resilience. They learned his poems by heart, organized poetry events, honored his memory near monuments in Kyiv and Kaniv in Ukraine, celebrated his rebellion on May 22, and frequently featured him in their artworks. In this collage, Shevchenko's frowning face is emerging from the darkness, and dark background serves mostly to highlight or contrast the main character, actually Shevchenko's face. The lower wrist on the right symbolize Shevchenko's recognition and glory. A closer reading of this collage can provide us with more specific details, but in process we miss other piece of information. What I mean, this fragment showcases the presence of the pupil of the eye, the gray hairs in his eyebrow, and the perfectly attached parts and edges. However, this close focus also means missing shades and the perception of the entire image. While Inquisition fire is full of vibrant shades of red, this work favors dark gray, blue, and brown with contrasting light beige and gray. Panchenko spent her whole life in Bucha, in Kyiv, from time to time traveling through Ukraine, and the former Soviet Union. During the Russian invasion of Ukraine, her house was also bombed. And by the way, the house of Mykola Plahotniuk, who lived close to her, was bombed this way too. So their houses are completely demolished. Panchenko spent months in her basement with a lack of food and water, actually starving. Her neighbors found her and took her to their home for a while. And when Bucha was released, Panchenko was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, such a challenge was beyond her strength, and on April 30, 2022, Liubov Panchenko passed away. She returned to her Bucha forever. The year later, in 2023, the Sixers Museum erected a monument on Liubov Panchenko and her husband Alexei Olinik, who passed away 30 years before. I won't reveal a secret when I say that the death of the writer or artist often bring them the greatest popularity. After Panchenko's passing, there was numerous of interest in her legacy. But some work, and I'm happy, was done before her passing away. In 2020, the Ukrainian Animation Association, UA Anima, with the support of Ukrainian Institute in Kyiv, presented the project 60s, The Lost Treasures. The project aimed to highlight the prominent women artists from the 60s and showcase their artistic background and legacy in one place, in one website. And one of the heroes was Liubov Panchenko. The project resulted in the creating of this beautiful website, where you can find most of her artworks, her archive, read her biography, and even it includes a game for children. These photos were taken in the Sixers Museum about 3 weeks. These young people came at 8 a.m. and spent the whole day in the museum, and yeah, we have found a lot of things we didn't know we have them. In 2021, the Sixers Museum published the book Liubov Panchenko Повернення, Liubov Panchenko Recovery. They translated in such way. It is bilingual in Ukrainian and English, and compiled all her artworks available at that time. Thankful to the Ukrainian Institute of National Memory, Інститут національної пам'яті, the e-book is available for free on their website. The next project was done by Ollie's fashion brand in Kyiv. They designed a series of silk hustki scarves featuring Panchenko's artworks. By the way, Liubov Panchenko would never afford at least one of them. A French artist, Christian Guemy, created a portrait of Liubov Panchenko on the building ruins in Borodyanka, Ukraine. He explained his decision to create her image with the following words. A quote: "1 year ago, this day, the Ukrainian artist Liubov Panchenko died in Bucha. She has been her whole life very brave and protested the Russian occupation with a hunger strike and died for starvation. I painted her portrait in Borodyanka. Her paintings are amazing. Please remember her, Ukraine. The Sixters Museum staff continues to preserve and promote Panchenko's legacy. The tireless staff, the director Olena Ludzinska and Halenka Kolotkevich, organize lectures, exhibits, tour guides about Liubov Panchenko on a regular basis. But one project I like the most. It calls Art Meetings and Workshops. In a light-hearted atmosphere, participants create drawings and paint bags inspired by Panchenko's artworks. The museum staff also sell a book, Liubov Panchenko Recovery, and organize fundraising to afford new frames, because collages have really poor frames, and the cleaning of the collages from moth. As I mentioned, Liubov Panchenko kept them in-house. She didn't cook, she didn't clean, so she just created. And I'm ending at this point, and thank you for your attention. And I hope Liubov Panchenko and her legacy became a little closer to you. And thank you also to my colleagues in Ukraine from the Sixters Museum team, and especially to Halena Kolotkevich, who provided me with all images and gifted the permission to use them in this presentation. Thank you so much.